Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. We have a very exciting webinar planned for us today called Enforce Effective User Permissions and Security Features in Dynamics 365 Business Central. The sheriff is in town. Now, as we are, maybe just wait a minute before we can get everyone to log in. And Kathy, how are we doing? Do we have everyone logged in, ready to go?
Yes, Mark, we've got lots of people joining, so I think we're good to go.
Excellent, that's great. Okay, well, why don't we start off with an icebreaker? And we're gonna start off with a quick poll to kick things off. All right, so hand on heart, are you wearing PJs right now? A, never. B, yes, how did you know? C, I literally took them off a minute ago. Or D, business on top, PJs on the bottom.
I love that.
Gonna give everyone a minute to ponder their choices. And why don't I take this opportunity just to thank everyone again for joining us today. We're very, very excited. And we really want this, this presentation today to be interactive as much as possible. And so we really encourage you guys to ask questions. And if you don't, then we might ask you questions. So just be ready for that. Okay, Kathy, how are we looking? Oh, look at that. Fantastic.
So nobody stand up, or at least 26% of the people don't stand up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful.
All right.
That's great. Okay, so as mentioned, we've got a really exciting webinar planned for today. It's all about law and order. We've called in the sheriff. Today, what we will do is we're going to look at how to approach setting up user permissions in Business Central. We're going to have a quick look at the application itself and how to set it up. And of course, our methodology in terms of the best way of doing it, best practices. We are going to recruit you as our deputies. You are our deputies in training. And we're going to arm you guys with all sorts of tips and tricks that you can take back to your Business Central instance and start to make some immediate change. In addition to this, we're also going to cover off our advanced cloud security app. So that's an advanced cloud security app, which extends the capabilities of Business Central's out-of-the-box security. And of course, as our special guests, we have an offer for you guys that we'll cover off at the end. And of course, we'll wrap up with a Q&A. Now, we really want to build some excitement around this webinar. So if you guys can, try to share this on your social media as well. Great, so here's a quick little screenshot of your Q&A panel. So everyone's logged in via Zoom. Like I said, we really encourage you guys to ask questions. So if you can, definitely press the button. No questions is silly questions. So please, we definitely encourage you. So my name is Mark Buckman, and I'm a key account manager with Foqus Canada. I've got about 20 years of experience as a consultant and also more recently in sales. Joining me presenting today is Cynthia, the Sheriff Prevey. Cynthia, a couple words.
Hello, everybody. I've been working with Business Central and Nav for 15, not 50 years now. And most of the time, what I'm doing is I'm working with users who are a little bit frustrated because they're finding that what they need to do in Business Central or Nav is harder than it should be. And what we do is we work through the different right ways to do things in Business Central, because there's usually more than one, and we look to find the righter way. And in doing that, I get the opportunity to see those aha moments or light bulbs when something is easier to do, or when they're finally getting the information out of the system that they couldn't get before, or for related to today's topic, finally putting security and permissions in place to take better control over their environment. So I guess you could say that every day I get to turn that frustration into fabulous. And if you can't tell, I love what I do.
Wow, that's really wonderful, Cynthia. I know that in my experience, user security is a very, very frequently asked question. And unfortunately, it's not something that a lot of people know much about in terms of how to set it up and how to approach it.
Yep, exactly.
So about eFoqus, I'm glad you asked. So take a deep breath. Our client-first approach to technology projects means that we take a genuine interest in your business and your success, delivering the and your namaste. Our client-first mentality supports your technology with a refreshingly different approach, focusing on your business, your processes, and what makes you unique. See how working with eFoqus can make the inhale much easier for a more relieving exhale by achieving the outcomes you desire. eFoqus Canada, so eFoqus has been around for about 20 years. We've been in Canada or North America for the last 5 years. We have an office in downtown Vancouver. We support Business Central and Dynamics CRM. And we also work with a lot of value-added partners, such as New View Strategies, to round out our offerings. I'd like to finish this off with a quick quote from one of our clients, Josh Hepner from Absolute Results. He says, "There are a lot of bad vendors in the marketplace. eFoqus is categorically different. We wish we found them 12 months earlier, had we only known how good they were."
Wow, that says a lot, Mark. It really does. Well, let me tell you a little bit about New View Strategies. We work with eFoqus, other partners, and end users, and we are an enthusiastic and passionate team of experienced NAV and BC trainers and business process consultants. Now, what makes us unique is that we are been there, done that users, former controllers, IT directors, COOs, solution architects. So we've actually walked in your shoes, and we have that firsthand experience of that challenge of increasing the utilization of our business system in support of our profitability and success of our organization. I guess you could say we've been there, done that. So I guess, Mark, I think that's a perfect lead in, because speaking of been there, done that, no, I have not been the one that robbed the bank. That's not my photo on the poster. But I will tell you that I have firsthand experience, unfortunately, working with a construction company and helping them uncover some fraud that was exposed. It was a very difficult situation. Their controller was stealing money from them. They hired this controller without checking references. And the reason they didn't check the references is because another valued employee referred this person to them. Well, as this investigation was occurring, it was determined that this person's previous two employers had actually terminated her. And the termination for both of them was because she was stealing from them. Now, they did not press charges. They did not prosecute. They fired her and they got the money back. They caught her before it was any substantial amount. So even if they would have done a background check, nothing would have come out. Now, it was about 2 years into her employment when this was uncovered. It was determined after several months that she stole about $200,000, a lot of money. And the really sad part of it was that everybody called this person mom. All the construction crews in the morning when they were coming in and checking in and getting their assignments and leaving, she was the one that they all looked to. So she was a valued, trusted employee. So how do we make it so that we don't find ourselves in that situation? We need to apply law and order. Well, we do have some outside forces that might put that law and order on us. For example, many people have heard of Sarbanes-Oxley, which is a technical and operational standard that's applied to publicly held corporations to secure and protect their data and to provide additional controls for financial reporting and segregation of responsibilities. But this only applies to publicly held corporations and what the board needs to do to make all of these things happen. But if you're doing credit card transactions, PCI would apply to you. ISO, HIPAA, IT security standards, if you work for the Department of Defense or if you do business with the DEA, all of these have their own standards. And you know who you are and what industry you're in and what may or may not apply to you. Now, SOX is what we hear about a lot, and a lot of the standards of SOX have trickled down and applied to not publicly held companies. But remember, it's not required, it's not mandatory, it really doesn't apply, or it isn't part of compliance for those small businesses. But what you do need to know is if you have a data breach and you're sued, those standards could be applied to you, even though there's nothing forcing you to apply them. They're considered kind of a base level, and whoever is suing you may say that, hey, it was a reasonable expectation that you should have had this level of security or your data should have been protected to this level. So even if you're not audited by an agency for standards, you need to have them and you need to follow them. Now, when I say running wild, I'm not talking about employees running through the warehouse and grabbing all kinds of stuff off the shelves, unfortunately, like we've seen in the streets recently. But what I am talking about is employees taking small amounts of merchandise or assets because they don't think it'll be missed. If you have a large warehouse and maybe you're selling dishware or something like that, and somebody takes a couple of mugs, nobody will notice, or at least that's what they think. And then it could, of course, go to something larger. Bogus expenses being claimed. That's another issue. Somebody submits something that didn't really need to be reimbursed. And depending on what your processes are, that can be done. Stealing cash through false vendor invoicing, or even taking it out of the petty cash drawer if you don't reconcile your petty cash drawer. You'll be surprised by who can be tempted when the opportunity presents itself. Now, why are smaller companies at greater risk? Well, first of all, they don't have these outside agencies necessarily pushing these regulations or controls down to them. But the other thing is that you might have employees that perform many functions or wear many hats across the organization. So you have a tendency to not necessarily put permissions in place because you think it's going to be too hard. The other reason is everybody's close. Remember, I told you we had mom in the other organization, and mom stole $200,000, but they weren't scrutinizing what she did because she was a nice person and everybody loved her. So we have a tendency in a small organization to put very few formal oversight procedures into place. And in addition to that, our controller or our lead accountant or the person who's our bookkeeper may actually have less expertise on financial matters than obviously what would be in a larger company. Maybe they were hired as a receptionist 20 years ago, did AP, then did AR, and now they're our accountant. It doesn't mean that they're bad at their job, but they might not have any formal training or even know how to go about putting oversight into place if they have other employees working for them. And then the other thing that's very, very concerning is when you look at $200,000 in a small company, or you look at $200,000 in a large publicly held corporation, that $200,000 means more to that smaller company. So even something smaller than that can really put that business at risk. And we need to remember that now with all of the remote work we're doing, we have other concerns that have been added into the mix. So let's look at fraud by the numbers. Most employees who are caught doing something fraudulent, it's the first time they've done something criminal. They don't have a criminal record. This is their number one offense. The average number of months before fraud is detected, 18 months. Let's say that person gets comfortable at a year and spends 6 months taking money out of the drawer. That's potentially a lot of money. And again, ironically, it was right around 2 years that this controller was caught. And it was $200,000. That's over the average. The 140,000 is what the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners has found to be the average financial loss for one instance of employee fraud. And 40 to 50% of the victimized companies can't get that money back. So what do we do? Whoops, we click on the right thing. We call in the sheriff. All right, so we kind of talked a little bit about with Sarbanes-Oxley, we need to segregate accounting duties. Whoever's the person who's creating the deposit slip and listing all the checks that are going to go to the bank should not be the same person who's recording them in Business Central. And we need to have 3-point checking and use purchase orders and receipts and invoicing. And there's all kinds of controls that we can put around the financial activities to make sure that responsibilities are segregated. We need to maintain those internal controls. We don't just set them up and then let them slip by the side. We need to scrutinize our bank accounts. And I'm not talking about just looking at an Excel spreadsheet of the CSV entries that somebody downloaded from your website for you. Go to the website because Excel can be modified. So you need to go to the website and check what you actually see in your bank account for that activity. That's one little audit that you could do on a regular basis. Make it part of at least your month-end process. And then figure out how to audit your books regularly otherwise. Even if you don't need an annual audit, still figure out and put into place controls for auditing different parts of your books in different ways, maybe get some outside help on that. The other thing we need to do is protect credit card and bank information. We don't need to put temptation in front of people's face. If somebody can see credit card information, and you'd be surprised how many good but desperate employees can be tempted by something that's right in front of them. So don't put it there. Provide continuous training and constant improvement. Create a culture of we want to always be looking at what we're doing and do it better. Side benefit, if you're always looking at what you're doing, people are less likely to do something nefarious because they're more likely to get caught. And that leads me to the last point. Make employees take a vacation. When someone's on vacation, have someone else do their job. When someone else is doing their job, again, they will be more concerned that someone will see something they're doing that they shouldn't be doing. And in addition to that, of course, it relieves stress when you get people out of the workplace and have some me time and create a better work-life balance. All of these things are laws that you can lay down that will get you in the right direction. Well, we also can do things, of course, in Business Central. So out of that list of 8, 5 of those are things that definitely apply to Business Central, including that training and ongoing improvement. And in Business Central, it's your responsibility, whether it's you as an IT manager, you as a company owner, somebody in authority is responsible for your assets and information and keeping them safe. Somebody needs to be the sheriff. Now, you can look at it, and depending on the number of users you have or how many hats your different users wear, it could come across as an absolutely insurmountable task. But there are tools out there, and we've created quite a few that help you look at what needs to be done, organize it, and put it into more manageable bites or more manageable pieces. But before we can even do that, let's take a look at the basics. Let's look at permissions in Business Central. So when I talk about permissions in Business Central, I like to talk about the permission sets first. And what permission sets are is they are collections of permissions related to performing tasks or particular activities, or maybe even a group of tasks in Business Central. So they can be very targeted or they can be very general. The more targeted they are, the more beneficial. The more general, you have the potential of them being too broad. So when I talk about targeted, let me give you an example. Payment journal. I might create a permission set for creating payment journals, but not posting them. I might create a permission set for my customer service representatives that would allow them to create sales orders, but not ship them and certainly not invoice them. Another one that I might create is to run reports. I might have salespeople that need to come into the system and I want them to be able to run reports, but I certainly don't want them to go in and change any of those orders. So we have the ability to look at each one of these and create a permission set or a collection of permissions targeted to those particular tasks. Now, the number of permission sets that you can create is unlimited, but obviously you need to organize these. And I want to go a little bit further so that you can understand how these permissions kind of come together. They apply to all objects in Business Central. So if I provide permission or access to table data, I can limit users to just reading that data, or I can limit them to just inserting or modifying or deleting or any combination thereof. However, if I give someone access to GL accounts, you need to understand that they're going to have access to all of the GL accounts. So if I have an AP person that I give access to the GL accounts, they're also going to be able to see the GL accounts that pertain to payroll and possibly see payroll entries. So when I'm creating permission sets, I need to think about that. Maybe that AP person doesn't really need to see all the GL accounts, and then I don't have to worry about them seeing that payroll information. Also, that AP person, I probably need to provide them access to the bank account card, or do I? Well, I think I do because they print checks, and there on occasion is a need to go in and update that last check number in the bank account card. So I need to give them access to the bank account card. That's okay. I can create a permission set that includes that. But what you need to remember is they're going to have access to everything on that bank account card. They could actually accidentally or even temporarily, purposefully go in and change the bank account number on that bank account card. So if I give them access to the bank account card, yes, they can change the last check number, but they could also change the bank account number. They can also see everything in any of the fast tabs. So we need to remember that when we give access and we're working with the system out of the box, we're giving complete access. Now, we can do things with the change log so that we could, for example, trigger that if they did change the bank account routing number or the bank account number, change log entry would be created and I would be able to track that. So maybe I would make that part of my month-end process to verify that. Now, we can provide access to tables and reports and code units. You see all of the different objects here. So potentially, again, this could seem really, really complex and insurmountable, right? How do I even begin to know what permission sets to do? Now, it's kind of cool because we get 74 permission sets when we get Business Central. However, I will tell you that those permission sets, unfortunately, are too broad. They provide too much access. For example, the accounts payable permission set includes the ability to delete sales documents. I don't want my AP person to be able to delete sales documents. They also have the ability to go in and modify the general ledger setup. So you can see here in just one permission set, I have some things that I certainly don't like, and I have some things that I really don't want them to do. So just be aware that even though we get 74, you're still going to need to create your own. Now, how do we go about getting those permission sets up to the user level? Well, once we get permission sets created, or as we think about the permission sets we're going to create, we also want to think about user groups. And just like permission sets are collections of permissions, user groups are actually collections of permission sets. So I can set a permission set up for accounts payable, and I can set some permission sets up for accounts receivable. And if I have somebody who wears both of those hats, that user will be part of both of those user groups. So what you need to remember is that user groups are who has the permission, and permission sets are what they have permission to. And just like permission sets are collections of permissions, user groups are permissions or are collections of permission sets. Now, we do get user groups in Business Central. And just like the permission sets, unfortunately, they are too broad. As a matter of fact, we have finance, accountant, and purchasing, but there's no accounts payable user group. So already we know we have to create permission sets and we need to create a user group. So how do we go about that? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to recruit our deputies. What we need to do is we need to put everything in writing and we need to involve everyone we can. It's not an IT task. This is a whole organization task. You need to figure out who's who in your organization, what they do, what they must have access to, what they should have access to, and what maybe they could or maybe they shouldn't have access to. And you need to get that all organized and get everyone involved as many people as you possibly can. And once you do that, you're going to be able to figure out how you're going to create your permission sets, how you're going to assign those to different users. Everyone should not be a super user. And I have walked into, I don't know how many organizations, and every single person is a super user. The way you do this is you get everything in place and you test, test, test. Now, how do we get everything in place? I want to show you one of the coolest, newer features that we have in Business Central. And I can't tell you enough how much this helps you be targeted. I'm going to right here create a permission set for new view strategies, and it's for the payment journal. So I'm going to use that example of this user will have assigned this set so that they can create my payment journal, but they're not going to be able to post it, because this person does not post the payment journals. So I create the permission set, I give it a name that makes sense, and I click on permissions, and you can see here, there's nothing listed. There's 0 meaning full permission. How do I determine what I need to do? Well, I can actually click on start and start recording. And Business Central will record what I do. So I'm going to go to the payment journal. And once I get into the payment journal, the first thing that I do is I process and suggest vendor payments. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my job. I click OK, I answer yes to the messages, and I get my payment journal lines. Now, the other thing that I'm responsible for doing is I need to run a report. And the report that I need to run is the vendor prepayment journal. So I'm going to run that report. And what this is doing now is this is going to incorporate that object into my permission set, the ability to run this report. Now I get the report back and I am told to look at the vendor and figure out why the heck that this payment is already showing up. So I need to be able to come into the vendor card and I'm going to look at the payment terms code. So since this is what I need to do in my job, I need to do that as I'm recording. The other thing that I have a tendency to do in my role is look at the ledger entries. So in that case, I'm going to go to line and ledger entries and look at the ledger entries. What I'm doing is telling Business Central, here's my job, here's what I do within this task. The other thing that I do is when I get the report back, a line is crossed out, I need to remove it from the payment journal. Now I haven't posted because that's not my job. And now what I have done is I have recorded everything. So I'm going to stop it. It asks if I want to record the permissions. I say yes or insert them. And what it's doing now is it's considering every object that I used in those few steps. So I'm thinking, you know, my payment journal, which is my general journal. Oh my goodness gracious. Look at all of this. Look, there is absolutely no way I, even with all of my experience, would know to add all of these. And if you look here, since I didn't modify any of those journal lines, it knows that I only inserted and deleted. So it was very specific about the permissions. And as I scroll down, you'll see all the table data and all the tables used, but you'll also see the reports. Suggest vendor payments, by the way, is a report. It's not a code unit. Gee, I might not have known that. And there's my vendor prepayment journal. So what I've just done is I've used a tool right here in the base Business Central application to record all of these permissions. So really what it boils down to is rinse, wash, repeat. I've shown you something that you can use with the recorder so that you can create those finite permission sets to build those more finite user groups to create something that you can actually use. But please test, 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 because you don't want to have that situation where somebody does something and it's work stopping. So you throw the super user onto them so they can get back past that work stopping situation and then forget to take it off. And now you have another super user out there. I'm not saying you're not going to run into some challenges, but the more you test up front, the less of those that you'll have. So please, please, I just hope to hear that whether you are today with many super users, if I talk to you down the road, that all of your users are not super users.
Wow, that was really wonderful, Cynthia. A very comprehensive review. And, I think that, it really brings some gravity to the situation, some of those personal stories that you shared. So that was great. Now, to lighten the mood, we are going to move to poll number 2. As the Dynamics 365 Business Central Sheriff at your organization, how secure are you feeling? A, I'm the sheriff and I'm in control. B, yikes, there may be a shootout at the OK Corral. C, the outlaws have taken over. So we'll give everyone a minute or two to ponder those answers and get them in. Take this moment, Cynthia, do you have a favorite Western movie that you like?
Actually, no. unless you consider Top Gun a Western movie. It does happen in California, and that's in the West.
Absolutely. Love Top Gun. My choice was Back to the Future 3, which I'm not sure really counts as a Western.
No,
but
I think it does. I think it could. I think it could.
Great. Okay. So how does that poll look? Thank you, Kathy. Oh, wow. Well, this is fantastic. I think we've got a nice mix of answers here. And certainly for those that have either a shootout or a taken over situation, well, we welcome you and thank you for joining us today. So that's wonderful. Now, we are going to move on to the next portion of the presentation, which is reviewing advanced cloud security. So this is this solution is a cloud solution. So it applies to Business Central in the cloud. It's available from Microsoft's marketplace called AppSource. Slide. So the advanced cloud security is designed to extend the capabilities of the out-of-the-box permission sets and security features. It's designed to be very simple to configure and to roll out. It gives you additional capabilities around data privacy. So we have the ability to be able to apply some dynamic filters to be able to limit the type of data that either a specific user or a department can see. We also add some additional controls around the field level as well. So I think a great way to sort of illustrate this would be to talk about that example that Cynthia brought up earlier of, let's call her Sue in accounting. Yeah. She works in the AP department. And we talked about the importance of being able to lock down the bank card. So we know that she needs the ability to be able to modify some fields, but at the same time, there's probably a few bits of information that we don't want her to be able to modify. So things like the account number or institution or branch number, etc. So in this case, what we did was we made certain fields viewable, but non-editable. The other scenario is the chart of accounts. And Cynthia raised a really good point that the chart of accounts essentially is open for anyone that has access to it. And so by applying a dynamic filter, we can lock down that chart of account range to work just within a specific range. Sorry, next slide. Mm-hmm. And this slide here really gives a nice kind of overall summary in terms of what Business Central security, where it falls a little bit short, and where advanced cloud security can take it that final mile, take you that additional level of control to be able to lock down the security to an appropriate level.
This really, makes it in your face, which is good, because for me, when I found out that advanced cloud security handled this situation, I just lit up, because I think some organizations kind of stop because they're like, well, I can't really do everything I need to do. So, what's the difference? Well, you guys have filled so many of the holes here. And I think this just makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So very specifically, what does it do? We add the ability to field level control. So you can select any table within the application itself and lock down a field to make it visible or not. That also applies to what we describe as non-field, so calculated fields, flow fields. We also have the ability to make them visible or not. Third, we also have the ability to be able to lock down the action bar. So if there are some specific actions that don't apply to the user or a user group, we can lock that down as well. And finally, the example of the data access filter. So again, the example of being able to lock down certain bits of information that applies to only the user or their department. So on the next slide, I just have a couple of quick screenshots that illustrate that. So this is the bank account card. And what you'll notice in the orange box there is the bank account details that are now viewable, but non-editable.
Yay.
And that, yeah, yeah, it's actually a big deal. You can't do that normally. So it is it's a really great feature. And then the next slide here, what I wanted to demonstrate was not just to show you a filtered list of the chart of accounts, because that would have been easy. What I did was I went to a different setup screen to try to access the chart of accounts. And well, me being a sales guy, and you got to remember, I'm a sales guy and I configure this myself. So it's not that difficult to do. I limited her range to the 10,000 to 20,000 range. So as she clicks the drop down, the only available field or the only available range is between 10 and 20,000. So again,
so in
demonstrating.
That case, yeah. I would be able to set up a range so that she wouldn't be able to get to or select any of the payroll accounts.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. I'm a sales guy. I picked 10,000 to 20,000, not the appropriate accounts, but I right. wanted to show something.
It illustrates it. It's good.
Absolutely. And that's the Advanced Cloud Security. So it's a very, very powerful app. It's available for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central Cloud version. And it is available for on a subscription basis for $1,000 per year. And this is licensed at the instance level. So again, if you're running multiple companies, there are some tools within the solution itself that allows you to be able to copy to from permissions from one company to another. And also you have the ability to be able to export your security configuration using the config package or the configuration package. So very, very slick tool.
Yeah, that is really nice.
Great. Okay, so just moving on. We are now moving on to the Q&A portion of the presentation. So let's check in with Kathy, our trusted assistant, to see if we have any questions that have come up throughout the duration of the presentation.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Cynthia. I think we all learned some great insights there. And yes, we've had quite a few questions come in. So we have just over 5 minutes left. So we'll get to as many of them as we can. And any that we don't get to, we'll answer in a blog post next week. So first up is a question from Sarah. And this looks like a question for Cynthia. Sarah says, you explained permission sets and user groups. Are there other areas that need to be set up to get permissions working?
Yes, there are. So again, the permission sets to me are kind of the basis, and then the user groups are the collection of those permission sets. And then there is some setup that needs to be done on the user records themselves. So it's not all you need to do, but it is the crux of it. And the reason I wanted to share the recorder is because those permission set definitions are the scariest. We do provide you with some resources that kind of step through some of those areas that need to be set up.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Cynthia.
Sure.
Next up is a question from Nishant. And he's asking, do you know of an app that's similar to Advanced Cloud Security that's available for Nav?
Wow, that's a really great question. So eFoqus, we've developed just the online cloud version of this solution. However, if you're running the on-premise version of Business Central version 14, or a previous version of Dynamics NAV, there is a sister product that's available from one of our value-added partners, another developer. And if you're interested and some of these features speak to you and you would like to learn more, would love to get you in touch, just contact us at info@efoqus.ca and be happy to provide you that information for a solution that works on your version.
Awesome. That's great, Mark. Thanks so much. 4 minutes left. We'll keep moving on. Next question here is from Alicia. She's asking, will I need my partner to get involved in setting up security user permissions?
Well, everything that we're talking about, whether it's the advanced security or the controls that are in Business Central, can be done by a user. However, I would suggest that you work with your partner, maybe just to get you started, because your partner should have experience that will point you in the right direction and maybe help you organize your plan a little bit. But no, it's not required to use a partner, but I would suggest getting some training, additional training, or working with your partner to be able to set it up more efficiently. Because again, the idea here is you don't want to roll it out and have your users run into work stopping permission issues because it wasn't done properly, because you'll never hear the end of it if that does happen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cynthia. That makes perfect sense. Next up is a question from Julie. She's asking, is it possible to configure advanced cloud security controls at a departmental or group level? Or is this only possible, or is it only possible to set controls at a user level?
Mark, that sounds like yours.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. That's a great question. So we actually mimic the standard way how Business Central approaches it. So you have the ability to be able to configure the advanced cloud security at the permission set level, the user group level, or at the user level. So it is very, very flexible.
Awesome. That's great, Mark. Thank you. And last question before we wrap up is coming from Owen. And he's asking, how do we incorporate security for some of our key employees without ruffling feathers?
Well, so I think you just need to make sure that everyone understands, whether you're a key employee or not, security needs to apply. It's not a matter of somebody being good or bad. So if you just set it up as this is the way that we do it, and whether you're an SVP, a controller, a CSR, a warehouse worker, it doesn't matter. You have your areas that you work in, and those are the areas that you will have permission to access. And you just make it no big deal. And then there's no concern about ruffling any feathers.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia. Now we're going to have to leave the Q&A portion there. We have had another few questions that have come in, so we will be sure to answer those in a blog post and we'll email it out to all attendees. So don't worry, your questions will be answered at a later date. And now, Mark, back to you for our final wrap up.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Okay, so if you guys are interested on wanting to enhance your Dynamics 365 Business Central security, we highly recommend you to download the security app today. Now, as mentioned, as being a special guest for us today, we are offering you a free month of advanced cloud security. So just email us at info@efoqus.ca and be happy to get you guys started. In addition to this, if you're looking at taking your training to the next level, we highly implore you to check out New View Strategies, getyournewview.com. New View Strategies has a wide variety of online courses, and I would say that they're probably best known for their famous controller bootcamp. Now, get in line. You are our new recruits. We want you guys to sign up. Our next scheduled training event for Business Central training is coming up in January 21st, 2021. The course is scheduled for 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Now, we are going to wrap up and we're going to provide all of the content details, information based on everything that we spoke about. Resources will be sent to you guys in a separate communication. Oh, and you know what? We have just enough time for a poll number 3. So thank you for that, Kathy. What's the first action you'll take upon completion of the webinar? A, dashing off to check how many super users you have. B, going to the app source to download the advanced cloud security app. Or C, we're getting in line signing up for training with New View Strategies. Wow. I think this might be a tough one between choices 2 and 3. So I'd love to see how this one shakes out. There's no wrong answer in this one. No,
I was gonna say, can you pick?
Wonderful. That's great.
Oh, dashing off to see how many super users they have. Great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, hopefully I will get to see some of the faces that were behind the questions on January 21st as we go deeper into permissions and security, and spend 4 hours on all the different areas of setup and what you need to do to get that up and running so you don't have everyone as super users.
Absolutely. Cynthia, thank you so much for presenting with me today. Kathy, thanks so much for your help in filling all those questions. Again, if you guys can, hashtag advanced security, share it, like, subscribe. We'd love to see you guys again and look forward to seeing you on January the 21st.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day, guys, and we'll hope to see you soon. Bye for now.